What is philosophy? Believe it or not, the answer isn't simply that it's boring, or difficult therefore boring, or irrelevant. As Pascal once said, to ridicule philosophy is really to philosophize. Now, as students of philosophy, it may interest you to learn that the word philosophy comes from the Greek words philo and sophia, which together mean the love of wisdom. But what does this mean? Does this mean then that just about anything can count as philosophy or philosophizing as long as you feel that it's wise or significant? Philosophy is not simply speculation, and this is true regardless of the importance of what you are speculating about. For example, if I have a terrible, persistent migraine and choose to engage in voodoo to make it go away, it's true that I'm doing something, but it's not true that I'm doing medicine. So, while philosophy is about thinking, and thinking deeply about things, it is also more than that. It is about thinking in a particular way. To the extent that philosophy tries to make sense of the world, it shares some similarities with religious theologies, or more broadly, spirituality. However, there are also important differences between them. Philosophy is not the same as spirituality or theology, although, as you will come to learn later, there are philosophies of or about religion and spirituality. Some of these differences are quite stark, while others are more subtle, and the exact nature of these differences can be controversial, in part because philosophy and theology have each played different roles with respect to the other throughout history. Generally speaking, myths and religions tend to rely on the authorities of tradition, faith, divine revelation, or cults of personality. Philosophy, on the other hand, relies not on authority, but on logical reasoning to build persuasive arguments. So, when you learn about Kant, for example, in a philosophy course, it's not because Kant was somehow better or more blessed or otherwise more important. It is because what he wrote and said made sense, and he was able to persuade others to consider or to adopt his way of thinking. As you begin to learn more about what philosophy is, and especially once you start engaging in philosophical activities like having debates with others or writing an academic essay in a course on philosophy, you will undoubtedly come to appreciate this emphasis on persuasion. Philosophical arguments are not, quote, arguments in the ordinary sense. They are not won or lost on the basis of who has the louder voice, or can be more emotionally forceful or psychologically manipulative. In fact, it may be helpful not to think about philosophical arguments as a matter of, quote, winning or losing at all. Although philosophy has the goal of producing a coherent and truthful picture of the world, in practice it usually generates many different accounts of the world, which stand in opposition to each other, despite each perspective being reasonably and logically argued. Many of the thinkers in this famous painting disagreed, and sometimes passionately, with each other about the fundamental nature of reality, personal identity, ethics, and every other great question of philosophy which we continue to ask today. Of course, this can be somewhat frustrating, even daunting for those who like both immediate and absolute answers. However, it is precisely in the study of questions that lead to opposing or otherwise contradictory answers that we find ourselves becoming open to new possibilities. Philosophy, though unable to tell us with certainty what is the true answer to the doubts which it raises, is able to suggest many possibilities which enlarge our thoughts and free them from the tyranny of custom. Thus, while diminishing our feeling of certainty as to what things are, it greatly increases our knowledge as to what they might be. It removes the somewhat arrogant dogmatism of those who have never traveled into the region of liberating doubt, and it keeps alive our sense of wonder by showing familiar things in an unfamiliar aspect. In short, By letting go of our need for easy certainty and embracing previously unconsidered possibilities, including the very real and therefore also very scary possibility that you could in fact be wrong about many of the things you had previously taken for granted, you are taking the very first steps toward becoming a more well-rounded and more versatile thinker. Many people who are only casually familiar with philosophy may be content to smugly dismiss it by parroting a common misconception that there is no right or wrong in philosophy, that is all a matter of opinion. Again, this is a misunderstanding. Philosophy is not simply a collected history of opinions and random assertions of famous dead people. It is a matter of making thoughtful, logical, and persuasive arguments. In other words, while we might be hard-pressed to find certain universal, quote, truths with a capital T in the studying and doing of philosophy, there is in fact a right way and also a wrong way to engage in it. While there is much more that could be said in response to the question, what is philosophy? You should keep in mind that the goal of learning about and learning to do philosophy is to come up with an answer of your own to that question. For the time being, you should know that the main branches of philosophy are logic, or the study of the nature of arguments, epistemology, study of the scope and nature of knowledge, metaphysics, study of the nature of reality, or ultimate reality, ethics, study about questions about how we should act, aesthetics, questions about art and beauty. There are other branches and subcategories within those branches, but most questions of philosophy fall into one of the 5 categories in this list.